The news is on Channel 4 now. On Granada at 7:30, a for sale sign goes up in Coronation Street. But now, Michael Aspel, and This Is Your Life.
The dream of apprentices and hardened hackers alike to win the big one. For footballers, there's no greater domestic prize than the double, the League Championship and the FA Cup. To the delight of a certain corner of North London and the man I'm after tonight, those celebrations mark the return of both trophies last season to Highbury, home of Arsenal.
Nicholas James Simpson was born part Rasta to Margaret and Peter Simpson at the rear end of 1980. In his early years, he had a penchant for a dirty protest and liked to sport dungarees. Fashion would play a large part in Nicholas's life as it progressed. Nicholas had a cultured upbringing with an early understanding of the French toilet system, and also he acted as a stunt double for Kevin in the Wonder Years. Unfortunately, Nicholas fell on hard times and was often malnourished as a child and made to work on a building site aged only 9 years old. It wasn't until 1990, when he escaped to Mexico, that he managed to join a cult that helped shape the rest of his life. It was there where Nicholas developed his passion for fashion, football, and most of all, friends.
Now, my first impression of Nick initially was that he was a bit of a moody
sausage.
And I generally learned that moving forward as well, was actually also ended up being his flatmate for a few years. Nick has one of those personas and characters that if he's in a
Grump.
with you, or if he's in a
Mood.
full stop, he lets the whole office or the whole world know.
He seemed like a decent guy, clean shaven at the time, less grey hair, and generally seemed like a nice bloke.
When did we first meet? Well, we go way back to Manwoods, so I guess I must have blocked off my first impression of Nick from my memory, because I'm still friends with him.
He liked war, which was good, age 10, and both our dads had beards.
We met at primary school. One of my first memories really of Nick is of us both being in trouble and called to the headmistress's office. Another kid had a white jumper and he'd been told everybody during the day he couldn't get dirty. So at lunchtime, Nick and I decided it'd be hilarious to throw mud at him. And our parents were called to the school, and that's my real first memory of Nick.
This man, or this boy, because we were 10, must be incredibly tolerant because of his sister, because I met the sister at exactly the same time, and I thought, oh my word, how do people deal with younger sisters? And this sister, Kat, hi Kat, was totally berserk.
I met Nick about 10 years ago, and my first impressions were, what an amazing sister he has, and how tolerant she must be to put up with this Burke for a brother.
First met Nick 15 years ago when we both worked for a company called Osby Media. My first impressions were of a very capable, very serious young man. Obviously, first impressions can sometimes be misleading, and I think that in this instance, this was only half the truth.
The first thing that really struck me about Nick was his incredible flowing curly hair. It's probably fair to say that in the mid-90s he thought he was writing gigs, and I hope that Joe's got a decent picture of Nick from that time. That's what Nick thought he looked like.
He didn't want to be like myself and just follow everybody else and wear what people were wearing on telly and all the Britpop bands and stuff like that. So he took it upon himself to just wear a lot of oversized Eclipse and spliffy jeans. These jeans were something else, and that to go with his incredibly frizzy hair and centre parting was a sight to behold.
He was into, I think it was spliffy and baggy jeans and stuff. He might have even owned a Nice and Safe Attitude or NASA record bag or similar.
I can say quite categorically, Nick has no fashion sense at all. He has zero, especially when we were growing up. It was terrible. I know that categorically because I had exactly the same fashion sense. I look at photos of both of us and we look appalling.
Fashion is obviously something that's very close to Nick's heart. He takes fashion very seriously. A pair of sunglasses for Nick are very much an essential item, whether it's to hide hangover eyes, to keep the sun out, or just to look cool in the rain. Nick is never seen without a pair of sunglasses.
Once on a shopping trip to Canterbury, he bought a pair of light purple cords. They cost a £5, which was a pretty good deal in those days, and I was so impressed with them I went and bought the same awful pair myself. So there was definitely a summer of 94, maybe 95, where Nick and I were kicking around in light purple cords, looking pretty awful together.
His fashion sense hasn't changed in 12 years. Ever since I've known him, he loves wearing a shirt that's slightly too small for him, and it's checked. He always wears a checked shirt. He loves a checked shirt. And now, since we've actually seen the introduction of Superdry, he might as well be sponsored by Superdry. Everything he wears is Superdry. Superdry checked shirt, Superdry t-shirt. That's what he loves. Oh, actually, and a Superdry jacket as well. He is endorsed by Superdry, I'm telling you.
Memories of Nick's fashion sense. In the years I've known him, he's gone from being a walking advert for Superdry, where literally everything he wears has been made by them, even down to his watch, to him looking like a Greek shipping magnate. And there's one time of year though where his taste has never changed, and that's Christmas, where he always insists on wearing the most horrific jumpers.
Despite coming across as a mild-mannered sort of chap, it is possible to make Nick quite angry. On a work paintballing trip, I once shot Nick in his delicate area. The noise was fantastic. Once the noise subsided, I ran.
He actually looks identical to a family friend of ours, but he looked the same as he did, almost identical, age 12, to someone in their mid to late 40s. Pretty much, you know, he's looked middle-aged from there on in, really.
One evening after Saturday school, or lunchtime after Saturday school, went round to Nick's house, knocked on the door, and I was greeted somewhat quickly by Nick standing at the doorway holding an air gun. He had a mad look in his eye and he was giggling quite a lot. And I think at that point I said something along the lines of, "You won't shoot me with that, will you?" At which point he shot me in the leg and then slammed the door, laughing like an idiot to himself.
The one thing that really lives long in my memory was the quality of the music we played in a Fiat Uno. Nick used to pretend he was into the cool music. You know, he had the Oasis album, for instance, but mine and Nick's real passion as teenage boys were, was Europop, and particularly the Venga Boys. So we would drive around the mean streets of Sandwich, listening to the Venga Bus Is Coming, Boom Boom, I Want You in My Room, and the all-time classic, We're Going to Ibiza.
I remember Nick stayed over my house. We were most probably 13, 14 or something at the time. We used to spend a lot of time playing football in the rec up in Sholden, wearing our Arsenal tops and thinking we were amazing and stuff. And I remember he slept over and we having a little chat before tucking down, not each other down, but just tucking down for the night. And he said to me, "Joe, I think football-wise, I could most probably play League 1 or 2 standard. I mean, and at my worst, maybe conference football." And I didn't have the heart to tell him that. No, it's never going to happen. I mean, he wasn't called Nick Toe Punt Simpson for nothing.
Nick lived in Sicily for a little while, and he invited me and Kat out to visit him. We arrived at the airport to meet Nick, but he was nowhere to be found. He wasn't answering any of his phone calls either. When he finally did answer, he explained that he was still in Malta from a wedding 3 days earlier and wouldn't be able to meet us. When he finally turned up 12 hours later, it turned out that the real reason he'd missed his flight was that he'd met a girl and wanted to spend some time getting to know her. So who was this girl that was worth angering his little sister for? Well, it's the girl he was about to marry. so I think we'll all agree it was definitely worth it.
Even if we don't see each other for a few months, we've always been able to pick up where we left off. He's always been a good friend and somebody to sort of share my thoughts with and catch up over a few beers. And primarily he's never judged me for maybe not keeping pace on the beer front, which has always been appreciated.
Well, the man's a living legend. Despite an excessive amount of facial hair and a dubious choice of football team, he's always been there, and yeah, that's all you really want in a mate, that's for sure.
He has been a mate for far too long. No, he's a genuine, honest, loyal person that never fallen out with him, always kept in touch. I know he's been there for me, he's been there for my brother, and you know, couldn't ask for a nicer bloke, nicer friend, and as we say in Australia, he's top bloke.
Well, the best part of Nick, well, I can only say, is his sister. Other than that, he's a kind, generous and honest guy, apart from when he's playing Monopoly, where he's a right cheat.
He goes out of his way to make things right with you, or if you're in trouble, he'll be there if you actually need him, which is a true mark of friendship. I remember one time I fell asleep and ended up on the train all the way down to Dartford. Not only did I end up in Dartford, I had also lost my wallet. And I remember calling up Nick and saying that this has happened. He then walked from Deptford Bridge into Greenwich, got some cash out, told me he'll be awake when I get back, and he'll pay for the taxi and I can sort him back out on another day. That's just one example. There's been many other examples when he's gone out of his way to help me through personal crisis and troubles. He's always been there. So in terms of nice things to think about and say about Nick, one thing I will say is if you need him and you are in trouble, he's always going to be there, and he's always a good listener as well.
Nico, I've known you now for got to be 30 years, and I can say in that time I've seen you grow and mature, and I think it's now perfectly safe to release you into the community under the care of Danielle. She's very willingly agreed to look after you now for the next 30 years, and I feel confident that under her care and supervision you might survive for that long, so good luck.
Nick really is a great guy. He is an amazingly positive and supportive friend, and certainly I've been incredibly fortunate to have had him around at times when the going gets tough, and he's definitely one of the good guys. So Danielle, you've got a good one. Over and out from the Costa del Finsbury Park.
I think Nick is incredibly loyal, very kind to his friends. He can be, I think once you are friends with Nick, you're friends with him forever. So yeah, and that's it. I've never once had a falling out, crosswords or anything, and yeah, we've been best buddies ever since we were 10. So yeah, thanks, mate.
Why is Nick still a friend of mine after more than 20 years? What I'd say about Nick is he's always a lot of fun. He's a really genuine guy. I've never really seen him criticise anyone, be unfair to anyone. If anything, he's reined me in and made me a better guy over the years. We've had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs together, and I'm sure we'll have many more in the future. Final thing I wanted to say is how happy myself and my wife Kate are that Nick met Danielle after so many years searching. It was really important to us that he met someone we considered to be good enough for Nick, and I'm delighted to say that in Danielle he's met someone who's far too good for him. So well done, mate. Keep punching. Unlucky Danielle, maybe better luck next time. But I wanted to wish you both many years of happy married life. Love you both lots. Cheers.